Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to be talking about Dungeons & Dragons in 2007. And this is the 34th year of Dungeons & Dragons history. And we're going to talk about it through the filter of CLEAR: Catalyst, Location, Entity, Artifact, and Relationship. So who is the catalyst for Dungeons & Dragons in the year 2007? Well, it's a lady by the name of Emily Care Boss. So Emily Care Boss is a designer for multiple tabletop role-playing games. She would establish JiffyCon, which would be a local, regional tabletop role-playing game focused convention, right? And so she'll start to build a community around her of designers, game masters, and players, right? And her momentum in overall game design will lead to Bubble Gumshoe. So Bubble Gumshoe is specifically a tabletop role-playing game where Emily Care Boss is the designer, and it's put out by Evil Hat Games, and its theme is overall, I'm a big fan of the show Veronica Mars, and I think Bubble Gumshoe is spunky young detectives, right? So like almost college age, right? And they're really, it's definitely, and also it's very mystery themed. So in some ways a little bit like Scooby-Doo, but more mature and a little more edgy, right? And Veronica Mars is really the absolute template for this game, right? It really has the same feel, the same almost zeitgeist overall, right? It's an unusual game, right? And one of the things that's important here is Emily Care Boss is a female designer, right? And that shouldn't be a big deal, but unfortunately it is. And the reason why is the majority of tabletop role-playing games are designed by men. And so at this point, we are actually in the process now of seeing female designers coming up in tabletop role-playing games and creating really unique and special products and games which are distinctly unique. They have a different, in many cases, they have a different flavor. They maybe have a different focus than we've previously seen. And so it is, it's important when someone comes out who doesn't share any of the attributes of the original creator, or doesn't share a good number of the same attributes as the original creators of the game, and so at this point, you know, the whole community is looking for female designers to step forward and to create unique standalone games that sit right next to tabletop role-playing games that were created by male creators. And this isn't a small thing, because there are dozens or even 100 other games at this point for every female, completely female designed, where a female is the lead designer, right? And again, these things shouldn't matter. It should just be everyone making this, the games, and everybody just enjoying the games for what they are. But when you have a situation where the vast majority of your games are coming out from the same type of people, you're looking for diversity to appear. And where diversity is starting to appear, the community is looking to nurture that, right? And to increase that. And Emily Care Boss is is absolutely one of the situations where you're seeing a strong designer with a very distinct design element that she is ready to place into games, and she's able to take the projects all the way through. And what this does is it sets a model for other female designers, saying there is a different path to do this through, right? And Bubble Gumshoe really is different. It doesn't have any genre elements. There really isn't any magic in it or anything like that. And it also gives a place for it's very non-combat oriented, right? There's very, very little combat focus within the game at all, right? And that's a completely different take, and that's one of the reasons why the community is looking for diverse voices within the design space. We already have, at this point in the year 2007, we have significant diversity within within dungeon masters, within players. But we have not achieved, and even to this day, we still haven't achieved the diversity I think that the community is looking to see occur at the macro level, right? So Emily Care Boss's original accomplishments really set the pace, right? And really helped to set the pace in saying, female designers are important, their voice is important in overall. And again, the Dungeons and Dragons is being impacted by this, right? So right now, there are female designers that are being added to the design team for Dungeons and Dragons at a greater rate than was previously seen, right? And I think that came from people like Emily Care Boss coming out and really knocking it out of the park with really unique special games like Bubble Gumshoe. I own Bubble Gumshoe. It's on my it's on my shelf as an actual physical book. I really enjoy it. I'm a huge fan of Veronica Mars, and that game is a perfect vehicle to run Veronica Mars type games, right? So it's really special and it's very unique. All right, what is our location for 2007? Well, it is a shocking location. It is Back in Formation, North Dakota. And in Back in Formation, North Dakota, that is one of the key sites for fracking, right? So this is in the heartland of America, and in many towns and in many regions, fracking becomes a thing. Now, what's fracking, right? Well, fracking is when fracking specifically is taking oil out of the ground using new compression technology and specifically chemicals, right? And basically what it does is, using chemicals, it allows oil to be pulled out of the ground in areas that previously it would not be economically viable to get oil from the ground. This is not a small change. This is an absolutely massive change in American history, right? And Back in Formation, North Dakota, is just one of these locations. But here, in Back in Formation, North Dakota, you have people playing Dungeons & Dragons in the same place that they're fracking, right? And the reality is, fracking comes forward, and it is huge change. So here's what happened. So prior to fracking, right, there were a lot of horror stories about, in 25 to 50 years, there isn't going to be any more of your precious, oily machine juice, and all the cars will come to a screeching halt, and we'll kill each other with hatchets just for a quart of oil, right? And the reality is, all of that disappears overnight, right, with fracking. Not overnight. It takes actually about 5-10 years, but fracking brings forward energy and oil independence so previously America had to be very, very dependent on international providers. With fracking, America is able to pull out of the ground tons and tons of oil, right? Literally tons. Millions of gallons are got from right here in the U.S. And at this point in America, we have enough oil. Now the current projections are we're not going to run out of oil for 400 to 500 years, which means that's 4 or 5 centuries. It's more than enough time to gradually, very gradually, move on to other oil sources. There isn't any emergency to find a new oil source. And right now in America, you can buy, we used to pay $4 a gallon for gas. Yesterday I paid $2.40 for gas, and everyone in America is in the same boat. Oil is plentiful. We can get it on our own land, and oil is now, a robust industry from an industry that people were saying was going to go away completely, like that. It wouldn't be viable to continue to pull oil out of the ground. All that disappears overnight and really brings America new options as far as maintaining the current vehicles, the current energy options that it currently has, so that tons of different jobs and expertise don't need to be thrown away overnight, right? And so it gives us more time. It gives us breathing room to transition into energy sources that we would prefer. Excuse me. This really, really is a massive change. And one of the things it does for America is it helps all Americans be less stressed, right? There's just kind of a sigh of relief where essentially, because we have just thousands and hundreds, we have millions of cars in this country, right? And the reality is, we thought, this primary source of transportation that was just going to go away overnight. Now we understand that we can continue to use that, and we have the time we need. There doesn't need to be a panic, right? And that's what people were really worried about. Like movies like The Road Warrior now are just like comical, because nobody's, with fracking, nobody's killing each other over oil, and they're not going to be for 4 or 5 centuries, according to our current projections, right? So this is a huge. Now, not only does it give everybody a sigh of relief, but it gives the business industry hope and a ton more, and so there's momentum that picks up for jobs, for different and industries, again, that people thought were, oh, well, this industry isn't going to be able to provide jobs, isn't going to be able to be robust. Fracking completely changes that conversation. So fracking is really important to Dungeons and Dragons designers, and not so much Dungeons and Dragons designers. This is one of those areas where, for dungeon masters, it's very important. And the reason why is they are able to really return to their games and enjoy the leisure of a game of imagination, because they're not worrying about what's going to happen in the future 2 decades away. The problem that was rising forward is now 400 or 500 years away, not even remotely. So fracking really changes the story completely. Who is our entity in the year 2007? Well, our entity in the year 2007 is LeBron James, right? Now, LeBron James is he's specifically a basketball player, right? Now, why are we mentioning LeBron James? Well, one, he is a historically important athlete, not just a basketball player. He's a historically important athlete, and the reason why is LeBron James was one of the players who said, hey, college is not necessary. And he didn't just say this, he showed it extremely clearly, right? He signed a deal with Nike for $90 million before he had ever played a single professional game. Before game 1 in the NBA, he signed with Nike for $90 million, right? That's more money than many families of people will ever make in their entire life, not just one, right? And so it really brought up this huge question in professional sports of when should athletes begin professional sports? Is college necessary, right? Now, the reality is the NBA would see this occur and then would step in and would slam the door on this entire policy. And they would say, no, we need some college before you're rolling up into the NBA, right? But the reality is that may be very hard to maintain in the future for the NBA. And the reason why is LeBron James has completely proven that it worked. He didn't have a day of college ever, right? Like, in the year 2007, he had never had any college. He signs a massively successful contract, and then his career has been stellar, right? So the reality is, NBA can say whatever he wants. LeBron James has already proven there's a path to being a professional athlete, incredibly successful, who supplies immense amount of charity, who supplies a ton of jobs, and never seen a day of college, right? So LeBron James has opened that conversation at this point, right? And so that conversation is still going on because the NBA is insisting, hey, we don't want to bring people directly out of high school, right? Now, it's interesting. It's a very interesting conversation. LeBron James turns out to be a historically important athlete, not in the U.S., not in basketball, globally and for every sport. LeBron James is in the conversation, right? His level of skill is epic, right? Like entire teams. That's another thing that LeBron James brings forward. All this nonsense talk about, oh, you need an important team. You need a team. You need a team to accomplish things, right? And you can't just have one star athlete and build an entire team around him. Nope. Oh, that's wrong. You can get one rock star athlete and get a bunch of scrubs, and you're going to be fine, right? Now, they're not scrubs, right? But the reality is you can absolutely build mega teams around one rock star athlete, right? Which had been highly contested before LeBron James, right? The idea was, oh, you need a well-oiled machine of all the people on the team are working hard and are top-level performers. No, you do not need 5 top-level performers. You need one mega performing athlete, and then you need some good, competent people to pass him the ball, right? So LeBron James really, he challenged many traditional thoughts about sports and how sports are pursued, right? Is college necessary? Big question mark after LeBron James. Do you actually need 5 top performers on a basketball team, or do you need one rock star performer and 4 competent players? Big question mark after LeBron James, right? He changed the conversation at multiple levels, right? LeBron James is incredibly important, right? And even though many dungeon masters and designers and players do not give 2 rats about professional sports, we do look over at professional sports every now and then because we run our own teams, right? We have our own teams as well with positions. Fighter, cleric, rogue, right? Wizard, right? Do you need to have all 4? Can you have 3 wizards and a fighter? What if your fighter is really good and the rest of everybody is just competent, right? All those questions are coming up for us in our games as well about forming teams and how teams perform together. Very, very interesting, right? So LeBron James is a huge entity in the year 2007, okay? What is our artifact in the year 2007? Our artifact in the year 2007 is the Tau Riptide Battlesuit. The Tau Riptide Battlesuit is one specific mecha, right, that is within the Warhammer 40K game, and Warhammer 40K steps forward at this point, right? The Tau Riptide Battlesuit is this absolutely gorgeous miniature. It costs over $100 just to purchase one, right? It stands about maybe between 8 and 10 inches tall, and it is to scale literally like 50, 60 foot tall siege machine that is, a really, really devastating fighter vehicle within the world of Warhammer 40K. So what is Warhammer 40K, right? Well, Warhammer 40K is one of Dungeons & Dragons' biggest competitors, right? It comes out of Britain. It comes out of England, the UK, the United Kingdom. And specifically, what Warhammer does is it puts forward a competitive miniatures war game, which is very different than Dungeons & Dragons. Dungeons & Dragons is about telling a narrative together, right? But Warhammer 40K is about telling a narrative, a much, much more limited narrative, right? With a winner and a loser in every single game, right? And it's also about crafting. It's about painting the miniatures, right? Now, Dungeons & Dragons, many people painted miniatures for Dungeons & Dragons as well, right? So there's a ton of crossover between Dungeons & Dragons and Warhammer 40K. And Warhammer 40K will absolutely steal players from Dungeons & Dragons and help to limit the growth of Dungeons & Dragons, because people are spending a lot of time and money buying, reading, and playing Warhammer 40K, right? And so it actually is a major competitor. And I would actually say Warhammer 40K is probably the most effective competitor against Dungeons & Dragons, because many of the people who are captured by the really cool combat elements of Dungeons & Dragons, many of the people that are really swept up with the magic of Dungeons & Dragons, many people who just really love painting miniatures, right? They all can move directly over into Warhammer 40K, and Warhammer 40K has these amazing miniatures, just literally the best in the world. Like there's never been a miniatures war game like Warhammer 40K. The scale, the quality, nothing like it, right? The number of factions, the world itself is incredibly innovative and compelling. It's really, really exciting, right? So the Tau Riptide Battlesuit and Warhammer is our artifact, and it represents Warhammer 40K. What is our relationship for Dungeons & Dragons in the year 2007? Parenthood. All right, so we're in the year 2007. This is the 34th year of, specifically, of, So, so in the year 2007, we are looking at multiple generations now are able to play Dungeons & Dragons. And they are. So we are now seeing parents introducing their kids, to Dungeons & Dragons. This is a huge change, right? In the 80s, the most basic trend that was happening in the 80s was teenagers bringing home Dungeons & Dragons, putting it down on the kitchen table, having a good time with their friends, their parents walking in and going, why is there a red demon holding a lady in his clutched demon hand on the cover of your book, right? And that conversation just did not go well, right? So that was a tough conversation for teens to have, right? Now, in the year 2007, there are parents holding up, hey, look, this is a demon lord. Welcome to Dungeons & Dragons, Sally, right? Their daughter. It's completely different, right? So we are seeing for the first time generationally people coming and saying, daughter, son, I'm your parent. This game is special to me, and I want to show it to you. And there's so much good and bad in that, right? So the obvious good is, oh, great. Parents have this cool thing to do with their kids, and it's wonderful, and we can all celebrate doing this as a family. Yes, that seems like it would be good, right? But at the same time, it's not that great in some ways, okay? One of the biggest things is Dungeons & Dragons is a genuinely cool game, right? And the reality is it has dragons, and it has rangers, and it has swords and spears and magic spells and all this stuff. What is the one thing you can do to make something so naturally cool uncool? Hey, Sally, it's your dad or it's your mom. This is the coolest game on earth. Parent approval is one of the biggest things to make something uncool right quick, right? So that is a problem in that generationally many parents who really want to, give this awesome cool thing to their kids in the same time by approving of it, it takes away that opportunity at 13 years old to find something a little risky, to have that conversation, say, listen, Mom, I'm casting magic spells, right? There was something cool in having something that your parents just didn't even understand, right? Whereas when your Dungeons & Dragons games are completely signed off on by your parents, it's a little different, right? So there's good and there's bad with this parental thing, right?